Certainly a fabulous property there in Burnside, and don't mind the look of that outdoor kitchen in the pavilion area. It looks very good, so I'm sure it won't be around for too long. Now, Duncan Week of the Thornton Group is still with me, and a little bit of a departure from the normal. We're going to continue on with our conversation because a few moments ago we were discussing the idea that 2011 hasn't been sensational overall. So some of the reasons why that's been the case, Duncan?
It started off pretty badly when you looked at the floods up in Queensland.
Yep.
Holidays last year, seeing people lives
Swept
being
away.
washed away. Bad start to the year. Knock-on effect to the economy was pretty terrible.
Yes.
Particularly up in Queensland with coal. The effects of that are now starting to come through. The rebuilding of the economy up there and the coal coming through. Politically, been a pretty nasty year too when you've got a minority government in place.
Yes.
So a lot of negativity.
Some indecision along the way?
Along the way, so lack of, not that we're political here, but it would have been, wasn't the finest year for all parties, I don't think, as the coalition was on the attack and Gillard was having difficulty. So she didn't look as though she was leading in many.
Yes.
I think most investment markets would agree with that. Locally, we had Mike Rann under the gun.
A couple of them under the gun, actually.
Yeah, Mike and Mr. Foley. So a difficult year in South Australia politically as well.
Yes.
Again, a lack of leadership.
Yep.
We had the introduction of the carbon tax with the uncertainty prevailing around that.
Yes.
We had the mining rentals resource tax that got through the Parliament last week.
Yep.
Had Port Adelaide looking pretty bad in the AFL, and probably the Crows didn't look that good as well.
No, well, unfortunately, if Anthony was sitting here, I'm sure he'd have something to say about that as well.
Difficult time. So there were a lot of, locally, there were a lot of negative impacts on people's decision making.
Yep.
I keep focusing on leadership. That flowed through into Europe. Inability to actually work out what to do with Greece. Then there was the knock on to Italy.
Yes.
And then on to Spain.
Yep.
So we have problems over there with indecision. US, we had indecision, railing of the debt ceiling in August, when the two parties, I think, were looking for political points. Culminating in August 5, the Australian share market hitting 3,700 points, being at 5,000 points in March.
Yes.
So a lot of nasty things happened.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, people tend to put their wallets away.
Yeah, definitely. So let's draw the line in the sand and let's talk about some of the exciting stuff that we've got to look forward to, well, certainly into 2012, because there's not much of this year left. Okay,
well, I think the first exciting point is that the Australian growth rates are looking very good. And one just has to look at the Reserve Bank minutes of meetings and see that we're still looking at 3.5% growth. To put that into context, that's a normal year.
Yes.
The Reserve Bank forecast 1.8% growth GDP in Australia this year. Looks like we're going to clip just over the twos. So not a great year. So fold in negative sentiment with not a great year. It's the bad year past. Looking forward, 3.5% growth Australia next year. South Australian economy is looking pretty good. As I keep saying, that we're not riding at the front of the peloton, but we're not lagging behind. Instant impact in this state will obviously be the billion that BHP Billiton's about to spend. Looking at its feasibility of digging a very big hole up north. But more impact, the greater impact, I think, will be what's going to happen on North Terrace, and it's just started with the new hospital. I know there's a lot of conjecture on it, but when you go and spend $2.5 billion in an economy that produces $70 billion, has an impact. And we can see it. We've got the Adelaide Oval redevelopment just down the road. So we've got $3 billion going into the economy. A lot of wealth will be created. A lot of jobs will be created out of that.
I'm getting the wind up. So, comment on the banking sector?
Banking sector needs to be strong. For the exact reason Europe's falling apart, our banking sector needs to be strong.
And some statistics on the funding that the banks have available compared to what they perhaps
Enormous funding now, because people are now risk averse. Deposits are growing in the banks. I think Westpac, Gail Kelly quoted 2 weeks ago on Inside Business on a Sunday, 25 billion on deposits, moved up to 125 billion.
That's massive.
That's a massive growth. So over 50% self-funded now. It's got to be good for us.
Okay, and we've got the other things like the submarine contract and the frigates and
the defence orientation of the state, the new battalion that's come into South Australia. I think we're looking okay.
Look, fabulous talk, especially the last couple of minutes. Fabulous talking on all of that. So thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks very much.
Look, I think lots to look forward to in 2012. In the meantime, we'll go and have a look at some of the hot properties coming into the market now. Well, that's all we've got time for this week. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you out at the Opens this weekend. On next week's program, we have another stunner for you in Unley Park, and you'll be kicking yourself if you miss out on this one. So we'll see you next week on Wednesday at 1 o'clock, TOOP TV, and now let's take a look at some of the other properties that are coming on the market this week.